Wow, Huples cat. Alcohol is a poison, and that's why we put it on our hands to sterilise them when we think we may have viruses on them. A lot of people are experienced or have experienced lockdown phenomena where they're actually trapped at home and their alcohol intake has actually risen. So they're drinking more often, on more days and for more hours. Because let's face it, if you're just sitting at home watching Netflix and you haven't actually occupied your brain and your mind by doing something constructive for your community safely during lockdown, you've probably got some time on your hands, and a lot of people who use alcohol are probably drinking more. So some people have stopped taking alcohol altogether, and some people are drinking the same, and some people are drinking more. Such is life. From time to time, people will do things differently, and they will use crutches, and alcohol's really a crutch. It's been around in the modern age forever. It's been around in the pre-modern age forever. In fact, in England, for most of my ancestors' development, people drank mead or beer because it was safer to drink that than it is to drink water, because when you add the alcohol, it tends to kill the horrible bacteria that they had and viruses in the water. So this is a interesting information sheet. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of this, but not too much because it's kind of dull. So that's the first thing. You want to buy alcohol that's alcohol, ethylene alcohol. You don't want to buy somebody's cheap version of wine or somebody's cheap version of vodka or spirits, very, very cheap on the street, because a lot of substances can be added to alcohol that can make you go blind or kill you. And although that's not really a thing in our world, in the West, because that happens over there, one of the things I would like to remind people is that we're having a massive Great Depression right now. So people are going to start doing things more dangerously to try and make some money, or they're going to do it out of ignorance and add stuff like antifreeze to alcohol. Now you're all going, no way. You'd be surprised. So we don't live in a convenient modern age where alcohol is dirt cheap and you buy it in any corner store in the States or in some parts of Canada. So be careful getting alcohol. Try and make sure that it's actually safe to drink. So the bad news is any amount of alcohol damages you. So you shouldn't drink alcohol at all. If you actually are having heavy alcohol intake, and that means daily or once a week binging, doesn't just mean once a day. It means if you're drinking heavy amounts of alcohol, and that actually would be 1 to 2 glasses of red wine, Kitty, every day, which she doesn't do, but her parents probably do, they're actually damaging your immune system. And you don't want to damage the immune system during a pandemic. One of the key things with alcohol is that we believe now it damages the fetus during pregnancy. When I was growing up as a young puppy nurse, we used to give all the pregnant women a bottle of Guinness every night to give them the B vitamins. They no longer, I believe, do that, though we used to do that all the time. But here's some general myths about COVID-19 and alcohol. So there's a general myth went around that drinking alcohol kills it. And here we get into, wow, we are in a computer program and it's on loop. 1918 to 1919, the flu previously called the Spanish flu, and there's no way I'm going to change the name of that now for PC reasons. Absolutely stupid. The Spanish flu, people actually believe that alcohol, including doctors, believe that alcohol would actually protect them from or reduce the symptoms of the influenza. So alcohol was hard to get in certain parts of North America, like Canada, because we had early prohibition, and it was very much sought after. And I think it's fascinating that here we are in 2020, faced with a pandemic very similar to Spanish flu in 1918, and our governments are making the same stupid errors, and the people are making the same stupid demands to be let free and get infected, and alcohol again went around as a cure, when in fact it totally isn't. So one of those, it sounds true, so I'm going to believe it things, is if you drink a lot of alcohol, or you rinse out with alcohol in your mouth and gargle it via your nose, you actually will reduce the amount of viruses in the oral nasal pharyngeal airway, and you will protect the air coming in and kill the viruses that hit the alcohol. Absolute garbage. You have to have at least 60, probably 65% alcohol, moist, over the entire surface to actually prevent it. Now I'm sure some of you guys could try to drink that amount of alcohol and keep that volume of alcohol in your mouth, but that's not a good way of doing it. If you're worried about inhaling the virus, wear a mask, preferably an N95. So there is absolute proof. Alcohol damages your immune system. In fact, it causes a lot of types of cancer, and it's one of probably the main killers in our modern society. And for those people out there who think we should just let everybody die from COVID-19 and not affect the people who own the 10 people who own the wealth in America as income, I would point out that alcohol, you should ban alcohol. But we're not going to. We tried that, it didn't work very well. There's been an uptick in poisonings of children during the lockdown phase, not just from alcohol, though that's been a risk, but from medications. People are putting medications out. Me and Kitty have our medications out, so we have the visual clue to take them, because it's important to take the NAC and the vitamin Ds and all that stuff right now, as far as we can tell, but it's probably snake oil. But if we had children, we'd have to put them out in such a way that children can't get to them. Remember, children are quite smart, even if their parents aren't. A child will find a chair or whatever, or pillows, and will open drawers and climb up. So because it seems to be well out of their reach doesn't mean it is out of their reach. So keep all medications and alcohol, if you have children under the age of 35 living in your house, under lock and key. There's an old saying, never drink alone, which is total rubbish if you live on your own and you're on your own in lockdown. One of the things I suggested early on, which I don't think got a large amount of uptake from people, though a couple of people did take the suggestion, was if you are on your own and you have a good friend who's on their own, talk about moving into their place or them moving into your place and sharing the burden, the psychological and physical burdens of lockdown. But if you're on your own and you like to drink, you have to be very careful. You have to be your own best buddy. One of the things I would suggest would be a piece of paper and an alcohol intake sheet, so you can actually see how much you've been drinking. Remember that once you start drinking, you tend to drink more and more because your judgment becomes impaired. And time of day is irrelevant. If you're actually off and you're not working tomorrow and you haven't got anything to do and the lockdown's going on, it really doesn't matter if you have a glass of wine at 10 in the morning, provided you don't have one at 11, 12, 13, 14, 1500 hours during the rest of the day. So it's not actually when you're drinking, it's how often you're drinking and how much you're drinking. So if you enjoy a drink or two, plan when you're going to have the drink or two. Try and avoid daily drinking. Like in the hospital over the years, I've seen many elderly women come in who've had 1 or 2 glasses of sherry every night before bed for 60 years. And that tiny amount of alcohol has created such a dependency that when we slammed it shut, they would go ballistic and start biting it. Thankfully, most of them didn't have teeth. Nothing funnier than a human biting you with no teeth, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's just something to think about, is that if you are going to drink, self-monitor, make sure that you don't actually put yourself in a position where you're actually accelerating alcohol use. You don't want to emerge from lockdown with functional or dysfunctional alcoholism. Both forms of alcoholism are bad. Dysfunctional means you can't work, or you can't have a family, or you can't pay your rent. Functional alcoholism means that you can have a family, you can work, and you can pay the rent just fine. So what's the big deal if I drink a bottle of vodka or 2 bottles of vodkas on a Friday night? Huge deal. You're actually giving yourself cancer and you're causing troubles. And you're also impairing the judgment, so you become more at risk from sexually transmitted disease, other types of drug use, and in a pandemic, from getting infected. So one of the daft pieces of advice is don't stockpile alcohol in the home. Yeah, absolutely stockpile alcohol in the home. If you cannot stockpile alcohol in your home, you have to go out frequently to get it. That's putting you at huge risk. If you can't have a stockpile of alcohol in the home without drinking it all, you should have no stockpile and no alcohol intake at all. And you should label yourself as an alcoholic and make sure that you don't take anything with alcohol, including cough syrups, etc. Because you should be able to do what I have. I have like a whole bunch of scotch floating around and other alcohol for specific bartering and also use in a long-term grid down. So if I had that in the house and I kept drinking bottles of scotch whenever Kitty was at work and I was off, I'd have to get rid of the stockpile. So some of the advice I don't think works. Don't be going shopping every day or every week or every 2 weeks. Cut yourself down to once a month like I've done, or every 2 to 3 weeks as Kitty's done. And Kitty would have shopped probably once a month with me if we weren't having to resupply her parents, who are old and are stuck in 1950s, 1960s capitalism. One of the perennial problems at the hospital is homeless and others coming in and stealing bottles of hand sanitizer to drink it. We've managed to stop that by not letting any visitors in, and our biggest problem is people stealing it to use as hand sanitizer. So I'm kind of concerned what those homeless people are doing for alcohol intake, but that's another issue, isn't it? The hand sanitizer in the home, the hand rubbing, alcohol, etc., if you're dependent on alcohol, when you run out of your stockpile of alcohol, unless you replace it, it's not a big leap before you actually think, oh, I'll put a bit of the rubbing alcohol into the glass to make the alcohol content higher. If you're thinking about that, even before you do it, you need to get rid of all the alcohol in the house and accept the fact that you're an alcoholic. It's highly dangerous to add any type of alcohol, even if it's pure alcohol, to anything else to drink it. Now I know a lot of you guys out there and girls out there do have 100% proof pure alcohol that you actually got to use and grid down to make alcoholic beverages with. And that by itself is okay, but again, it's very hard to monitor how much alcohol you're drinking. This isn't grid down, this is a temporary SHTF. Consider whether it's safe to do that. I would say it probably never is safe to do that, but each to their own. Alcohol causes violence. I do remember my mother getting drunk a lot, and I do remember attacking and using violence and using actually ceramic ornaments on various boyfriends to smash them in the head and cause severe damage to them. So what I'm saying here is that if you are at risk from home violence, either causing it or being the receiver of it, you really don't want alcohol around. Cannabis is okay because it sedates people, so they say. I do have cannabis in the home for grid down purposes. I haven't used it. I had that one joint that I did on camera and it killed me. I've really got not much desire to get stoned right now. But I know people out there are using cannabis as well as a crutch, and their cannabis use is also rising steeply during lockdown. Again, why aren't you occupying your brain doing something functionally useful for yourself and your society during lockdown rather than sitting on your duff watching Netflix, smoking weed and getting smashed on alcohol? You need to think about who you are and what your role in life is and how to deal with it. And it's easy for me to say that because I'm not in lockdown. And I've definitely seen a lockdown mentality develop in people who are in lockdown. They're somewhat desperate to talk to you, and even if they know you're a nurse, and they seem a little bit dysfunctional. If you look around on the YouTube, you see people who have really strongly socially isolated and people who haven't, just by how they look and how they act on camera. I think that's a really interesting thing for me, is that people I work with, we get tons of social contact at work. Usually it's not that safe, but we get a lot of physical talking and close space, and we actually see a lot of faces as well. We don't just keep the masks on all the time, which we probably should. But it's a different thing when that's been removed from you and you're on your home alone, or you're just there with your family and you don't see anybody else week after week after week, except to go into a store to get out of the store and everybody's wearing a mask and looking scared. It's a different experience from living the normal life. And I think when people are talking about the cost of the cure is higher than the disease, that's nonsense, because they're talking about the fact they can't cope without getting income because their government won't give them a subsidy, because their government prefers to give money to the 10 people that own 80% of the Dow rather than to a normal people. But for most people in most countries, we're getting reasonable subsidies to most of the population from the government, which we'll have to pay back. But let's face it, now's now, then's then. But the thing with it is that if you don't actually get a decent income, you're actually going to be more likely to drink. This is one of those quintessential things. The more stressed you are, the more likely you are to use cannabis and alcohol and other drugs to actually block out the pain in your life, the emotional pain. So if you're able to go and figure out what to do, if you can't figure out what to do and you're mobile, what's stopping you spending half an hour to an hour a day wearing gloves, carrying a trash bag, and picking up trash around your area? Nothing at all. Good exercise, good for you to get out there and do something of use for people. Even if you can't get out of the house, what's stopping you making masks? What's stopping you being online supporting people positively that are doing stuff? A whole bunch of stuff people could be doing rather than sitting at home drinking alcohol. If you're in lockdown, or if you're not in lockdown, establish a daily exercise routine. Put aside 5 minutes to half an hour to an hour a day that you don't drink before and you don't drink during, and you exercise. So that's one of the things you want to do, is actually have a planned structure to your day. So you're not just getting up at a random time, not knowing what time it is. You're actually setting an alarm, you're actually getting out of bed, you're actually brushing your teeth, bathing frequently. All of that stuff you need to be doing. You need to keep yourself on a routine, and you need to have a purpose and a sense to each day. One of the key things in a grid down pandemic situation isn't to stop worrying about next week. Okay? I mean, I'm not talking about not prepping for it, not having food for next week and meds for next week. What I'm talking about is stop psychologically worrying about it. Be like a terrier. Worry about the now. Everything other than the now in a pandemic, in a grid down SHTF situation, is unimportant. Getting through this moment, this hour, this day, that's what's important. Worry about the effects of the pandemic later on. Worry about all of that stuff later on. Plan for it, think about it, scenario build for it, spend some time online discussing it, but don't worry about it. You'll either catch it and be fine, or you'll catch it and die, or you'll never catch it. Society will either stumble and fall and never get up again, or it'll stumble and get up again. Who knows? Who cares? In the here and now, you've got 3 jobs. Do not catch the disease, do not pass along the disease, and be as happy as possible. So that's a bit preachy from me, but I hope you enjoyed that. I know people out there do have functional and dysfunctional alcohol issues. Absolutely, a pandemic's not helpful. I do understand, that's why I've done this one. And I would invite you all. So pick your favourite alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage and upload a video at 6 PM Eastern Standard Time on Friday, May 22nd to YouTube. If you're drinking it and having a little social chit-chat with everybody who watches it and talking about good stuff and happy stuff and nothing COVID-19 related. 30 seconds, 15 seconds, half an hour, just ramble on, have a social interaction. Imagine I'm there, talk to me, or maybe not me, but imagine whoever you want to and talk to them, and let's talk and have a social interaction showing alcohol and non-alcoholic use in ways that aren't dysfunctional. That's all from me. Toodles. This has been a Sleepy Terrier 2020 production. One of the perennial problems we've had at the hospital is homeless and others coming in and drinking our hand wipes. Like they'll go around and collect the hand sanitizer. They'll go around and actually hand wipes. We'll be there for you, like we've been there before.